suggest there's a technology paradigm shift here too. You know, we're going from the kinds of things that we see in most universities, where if you go in most universities, you find labs and you find computers, and students can come in and they can use the computers, right, in various places, sometimes in more public settings, sometimes in more formal settings, more occasional access, and they can, you know, they can go to their living areas, and they've got access there, and we've got broadband all over Hong Kong. And it's still, there's a lot of directed learning kinds of things that are out there, you know, things that instructors are doing. But that's changing. That's changing too. As we start thinking about personal devices, as we start thinking about wearable computing, as we start thinking about the student being in a bubble of technology and they're mobile, they're going all over the place, what part are we playing in that? So it's a different perspective, and it gets us into an area of much more self-directed learning. Inside this student bubble, surrounded by their technology, there's lots of competition in there for learning. Okay, you know, we can't say that our students aren't learning. They're learning. Now, are they learning from us? Woo! You know, we're just one of the competitors in that space. Okay, so that's different. That's a change. That's a change. We don't have their conscious, continual attention. Well, we never did, but you know, that's another story. But at any rate, there's a shift. There's a shift, and I think it's, to me, it's important that we recognize that and think about it. And these kind of settings are a great opportunity to do so. Part of what's gone into enabling some of that which we do in technology are learning management systems. These can be both sustaining and disruptive. I'm not going to deal with them at all here today, because to me they're more kind of traditional support. They're kind of middleware. Okay, they're the kind of things that we put in the institutions that then, to me, let us attach a lot of other things to it, you know, that can potentially be much more interesting. So learning management systems are useful, but to me, the kind of things you can do with Blackboard plugins and wikis and blogs and Facebook building blocks, to me, that's where more of the opportunity lies. It's good that we do have a lot of open source and beyond, Moodle, Sakai. We've got things that we can now work with technologically and tailor to meet our needs. In particular, an area that I like to focus on is distributed team support. And distributed and team support means that in one of my classes that I've taught now for 10 years here at Hong Kong, I create teams of students. And in those teams of students, 2/3 of the team are somewhere else in the world. Okay. Netherlands is a place I always use, but this last year we had the U.S., so we've got the U.S., the Netherlands, and Hong Kong, okay? And these are like 8-9 person teams with 2 or 3 people from each location who have to work together as a virtual team, okay? That's a great opportunity for experiential learning, okay? They have to learn what it's like to be part of a team, this is in business context, when they'll never be able to sit across the table from that person, but they still have to work together, solve problems. Okay. That creates an interesting environment. So, you know, some of the things we use are more traditional technologies, video conferencing. The nice thing about video conferencing now is it's free. Okay. In the old days, you know, greater than 5 years ago, you really had to pay serious money for video conferencing. Well, it's just free now. It's just there. You know, the video's there. Well, it's not really free, but, you know, everybody's got internet, so it's free. You know, so it's, you know, it's part of the electricity anymore. You know, so the internet is there, and we can use video conferencing. And this just shows the basically the 3 sites, the Hong Kong, the U.S., and the Netherlands that we had hooked up, and an administrator who, I'm not sure where he's from, frankly. He came in there somewhere. There's a whole area of advance in this area in that of telepresence. And right now, telepresence is available. If you go to Cisco, if you go to a couple of the other vendors who are out there, and it really does create a much better sense of seeing people, seeing their reaction, sensing what they're doing, even to the point of kind of like a virtual handshake. I mean, you can kind of get the idea that you really are talking to somebody. Whereas if you use a lot of our traditional video conferencing, it's like talking to somebody on the moon. You know, it's kind of like, you don't really have that sense that you're there, and that's even if they're next door. Much less halfway around the world. But telepresence is really not affordable, and I would say yet. Video conferencing wasn't really affordable a decade ago either. But the area that I'm particularly interested in right now is really virtual worlds. And the reason I'm interested in virtual worlds is, number one, again, they're free. Okay, so they're widely available. Also, Gartner Group is usually very conservative. They're notoriously conservative, and they're a think tank. And for Gartner Group to come out and say something like 80% of active internet users predicted to have some kind of second life, a virtual world in the virtual world by the end of 2011, that's a bold statement. That's a bold statement. Now, what do we do? Are these virtual worlds going to be part of our educational space? No. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity. Okay, and it gets us into a lot of the student-centered kinds of things. Providing the customer with what they want, when they want it, how they want it, where they want it, at a price they'll accept, free. And so it gives us a lot of flexibility. It gives us an opportunity for variety. So these virtual worlds are something that's really caught my attention over the last few years, and to think about it in the context of education and what we can do with it, and what it might do to us, and some of the issues that are engaged in there. So one of the ones I've been working with particularly is Second Life. And as I asked, there were about, I would say, 10 to 15 hands that went up here of people who have their Second Life avatar. It's just one of many. Okay, Hype High is another one here on the mainland that's very active. That's a lot like Second Life. They all have a lot of similar characteristics. Typically, they're avatar-driven. In other words, there's a representation of yourself there. You're not there, but your avatar is. And there's some kind of money involved. In the case of Second Life, it's a thing called Linden dollars. Okay, and actually, the first millionaire in Second Life was a woman in China, mainland China. There's real estate things you can do. There's all kinds of things you can do in there. There's business sites. Companies like IBM and Dell, and there's play sites in there. There's socialization. It's a virtual world. Okay, all of the kinds of things extended that you could experience in our traditional world. There's also a fair amount of educational presence out there now in Second Life. There's hundreds of universities who have islands who are doing everything from introducing students, advertising. Harvard Law School is out there with a really full-blown program in distributed context, and so you've got a lot out there. You've got things like the Swedish Embassy who's out there, and you've got a lot of different kinds of interaction. Now, right now, Second Life is fairly Western-oriented, but has global aspirations. But as I said before, it's only one set of virtual environments. Hype High is another. The Chinese government is actually looking at using a virtual world for employment of people to not have them cluster in all of the major cities. So there's a lot of people doing a lot of thinking in these areas.